Hi there, it's Ina with Taproot Tarot, and you might remember a few months ago, eBay suggested to me a few decks I had never heard of before, and I ended up getting all of them, one way or the other. One was the Tarot Renan, which I have 2 copies of now and have done a couple of videos on it, and the other one was the Rigel Tarot, which is very quirky, and I did a video on that one as well. And this is the third one, so if you were wondering, hey, what was the third deck? If you're keeping score at home, then this is the third deck. And it's an abomination, I have to say. And also, I absolutely love it. So it's very kitschy and weird. And just a cool, interesting deck. I really like it. So this is a US Games printing of a Carta Mundi deck. And it doesn't say so on the outside, but it is actually a remake of a Dodal from the 80s. So ever since I got it, I've been wanting to compare it to my other Dodal, which is by Pablo Robledo. And since I've gotten this one, I've actually gotten a third Dodal, the Artisan version. So I'm going to compare the 3, and you can see what I mean when I say this deck is an absolute travesty. And we'll enjoy the quirkiness together. I believe I've fixed the colors on my camera, so this is actually looking pretty accurate. So that's a good thing. Inside the box, this actually does say that it's based on the deck published by Jean Dodal in Lyon around 1700, probably more like 1701. And here is the back. It has a bit of a guidebook, which has some kind of cartomantic type ways of reading where the meaning changes if the card is next to another certain card and things like that. So I find these types of old style guidebooks really pretty interesting. But it's a very complicated way of reading that I don't know when I will ever master, if ever. But as you can see, it is a Carta Mundi deck, which was just distributed by US Games in this case. And it is great, satiny smooth cardstock. I really like it. Nice bright colors. And joining it will be the Pablo Robledo Dodal. Which has the more traditional ermine back. And you might also see that it has ghost images. So I'm not sure if paper was reused. I really like it. Pablo Robledo, as far as I know, hand makes his decks. So I think this is pretty cool. You can kind of see a figure on there. So that's present throughout the deck and even on the box. And I'm not sure if this is a funky printing run or if this is true of all of them. So if you have a Dodal by Pablo Robledo, let me know if it has these ghost images on it. I think they're cool. And this is the typical amazing cardstock that he tends to use. I'll put this one over here. And finally, we have the Artisan Tarot Jean Dodal. And you might be familiar with Artisan decks. They have this nice linen finish. And their historical decks tend to be very cleaned up line work with nice refreshed colors. So they are beautiful. You can see hand restored and adapted. Giving credit to Jean Dodal for the original. Also of note is the book that comes with Pablo Robledo's deck. It has a shortened version in print, and then you can also go online for the longer version if you have the QR code. And it's so good. It's an excellent history of the Type I Marseille. At the time of this printing, though, or according to this book, the Dodal was the oldest complete Type I, and I believe now that is actually the Noble, which was from 1650. Please correct me on that and let me know. But he does list this as the oldest Type I TdM, and I don't believe that's necessarily true. Other than that, though, this is an amazing history book. It lists the characteristics of the Type I. It talks about the history of the card maker and of card making in general. Like, if you have a chance to pick up a Robledo Dodal and you're interested in history, it's worth it just for this book, but it's also an amazing deck. Now, it's been a while since I've read the full version online, but I just read the in-print shortened version last night. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is from this book. All right, so right off the bat, we see our first problem, and that is this really interesting interpretation of the creature going after the fool. It looks like they're trying to make it look more like a dog here. Robledo has made it look like a cat, and so has Artisan. And there is a pretty cool story that was famous in the Middle Ages of a cat chasing somebody off. The story is kind of complicated. I don't remember the details. But yes, this is likely a cat that was from a famous medieval story. So this interesting interpretation. They're kind of trying to do something with these shapes here, I suppose, but it's kind of funny. But we do see our first indication that this is a Type I Marseille, which is the label of Le Fool, or the Fool, instead of Le Mat, or the Madman. So that's a fun detail. Pretty similar here, although we're using English titles in the US Games, or Carta Mundi deck. And these are definitely redrawn, you can see. So very similar. And some artistic license taken with the coloration. I actually kind of like these colors. And just depending on the mood or the vibe of the day, any one of these will go to good use. Now, this was a time before, even in 1701, the French language wasn't standardized yet. So we have a very interesting spelling for the Papes. I won't even try to attempt to say that. And we have it here, translated to not just English, but because it's the US Games printing, I suppose, to the RWS style. She does have a beauty mark in the Dodal. And you can already see a little bit of the problem with this deck, where we've got a very prettified Empress, and I do not like prettified people in my decks. It's fine if they come that way originally, but when a historical deck is being refreshed, I think it takes away some character and some of the realism, I think, of the time by prettifying it. And one of the great things about the Dodal are the eyebrows. Like, check out the expressiveness of these eyebrows. And that is consistent throughout the deck. It's one of my favorite parts of the deck. And they just completely disregard that in the prettified US Games version. And yeah, this is still cool and quirky. I love my vintage quirky decks. This is from the 80s, by the way. No, 1996, actually. That's cool. These are in really good shape, and they weren't that expensive either, by the way. So this is another trait of the Type I, a number 4, floating in front of the Emperor, which has been eliminated in the US Games version. And that is said to represent a ruler of the time. I'm not remembering the name off the top of my head, but it's in the Robledo book. And he's got his cheesy white shoes, which I love, actually. Another aspect of the Type I is the pastoral staff being held by the Pope instead of the Triple Cross. And this Pope is a bit prettified as well, as you can see. The Cupid is facing to their right, our left, and is blindfolded, which is typical of a TdM 1. I actually stuck to the lover card pretty well. Just labeling it lovers instead. And here we have the scalloped canopy over the chariot rather than the draped awning or draped canopy of the Type II. And I love these horses so much. And they did keep the horses, like there's just one being kind of spacey and the other one giving the spacey one a side eye, which I think is so cute. Super adorable. In Robledo's book, he goes into this spelling of justice with the I and V a little bit. I think it was really just to make the printing easier. A little bit of prettification happening there. Yeah, this is an unfortunate edit, I think. The Dodal Hermit is so cool looking. I shouldn't say unfortunate. You know, I don't need 3 decks that all look exactly the same. I actually love the quirks of the US Games Carta Mundi deck. It's nice to have something different. So he's very cool in his own way, but definitely super different from the original Dodal. So you can see where the US Games deck was based on Dodal, but apparently in 1996 people weren't as interested in having more of an exact replica, or a faithful replica, I should say. So this stands for, I'm not going to pronounce it right, but something like Fait pour l'étrange, or l'étranger, which is made for strangers or made for people abroad. In other words, made for export. And apparently at this time, there was a tax on all cards except those made for export. And something that's really interesting that Robledo talks about in his book is that the way they had to pay the tax on cards made for local distribution was that they brought all of their molds and materials to a manufacturing place and paid to have them printed by somebody else. So they weren't able to do their own printing. And knowing that really stands out to me because I've been thinking about, you know, all of the printing mistakes that happen. And so if somebody else is doing your printing for you with your materials, it makes a whole lot of sense where a lot of those mistakes could happen. So I think that really explains a lot. Now, presumably, and I don't think he lays this out specifically, but this may have been printed in Jean Dodal's own shop because it is for export and therefore exempt from the tax. I do have to say that this is an amazing lion. It's just very creative. And I love that they didn't try to prettify the lion. They tried to prettify the lady, representing fortitude, of course. And they took out the tax stamp here, but kept it in for the other two. And the Type I hanged man has his hands tied behind his back so tightly that they're dangling, his fingers dangle above his shoulders, and his tongue sticks out. They did take the tongue away in the US Games deck. We also have a reversed 12, which was common, a common printing error, or maybe even making it possible to hold the card upright. Again, just a misunderstanding of what the card represented. It was pretty common. But yeah, no tongue in the US Games. And they switched the number back around. This is kind of funny the way they have the foot turned and more bony in the US Games version. I'm going to compare that with Robledo's again. Yeah, he's got more fleshy feet in the original, it looks like. Definitely a prettified face in the Temperance. And covering up her bust a bit. And the Devil with a face on his belly and eyes on his knees, as is typical for a Type I. And I should say definitely probably their knees and belly rather than his. And here's another detail where the flames from the lightning strike actually face backwards in the Type I as opposed to the Type II. And that detail is actually preserved in the US Games deck, which is pretty cool. I love that original face on the Temperance, or I'm sorry, on the Star card. She's been prettied up for the US Games deck. A lovely forward-facing full moon in the moon card, whereas it's in profile in the Type II. The US Games colors are really clear and crisp. I actually really find them appealing. And I should say Carta Mundi. It's coloration that's pretty typical of Carta Mundi. There are different versions of the Dodal printing out there. This one has one of the siblings winking, or possibly just missing part of their eye from old wood blocks, perhaps. And that has been redrawn for the Carta Mundi version, and also for the Artisan version, which makes me think that it probably was a missing piece to the wood block. In which case, often other versions of the deck are referred to restore what was probably there. The world without crossed legs and wearing leaves is also an aspect of Type I. And we see the text stamp here again. I'm not sure what's going on the head of this ox. Is not reflected in the Artisan version. You can see his cute little wings a little more clearly in the Artisan version. The Type I tends to be more of a non-gendered world figure as well. One of the things that people love about the Dodal deck is this cute little bird on the Ace of Cups, but we can see that's missing here in the Carta Mundi version. So according to Robledo, the FPE here refers to this being for export as well. And the PLN is pour le négocier, or for trade. And here we have Jean Dodal's name, just spelled with an I instead of a J, which was common. And likely his real name was probably Dodat, D-O-D-A-T, and Dodal was his professional name. It looks like the cups in the Carta Mundi deck are kind of cleaned up a bit. It's got interesting hair in the Valet of Cups, and that has been preserved. Knight of Cups was a little out of order there. The Type I labels the knight as chevalier instead of cavalier. And you can see the eyebrows are a little bit preserved in the Carta Mundi deck in this case, but just, you know, moderately prettified. His eyes are actually pretty cartoonish in this one. I tried to put these in order. Okay, is it just me? Or does the Carta Mundi Valet of Batons look like Rowan Atkinson? I adore that. Definitely has a different look in the original. You can really see the amazing eyebrows in the Knight of Batons, both on the horse and the human. And those are preserved to some degree in the US Games one. Okay, prepare yourselves because this is a tragedy, what we're about to witness here. You probably know by now I love a grumpy Queen of Batons, and the Type Is are my favorites. I think I mentioned recently that the Noble might be my favorite, but I think the Dodal is actually my absolute favorite Queen of Batons. She's so good. She may or may not be holding a glove. In the Noble, she definitely has a glove, you know, so she can decide whether you deserve the club or the glove, depending on your infraction, I suppose. And she's just no nonsense, looking right at you in this one. Often she has more of some side eye, but it's so good. Okay, are you ready? This is terrible. Oh, look what they did to her. No. It's so bad. But it's so bad that it's funny and hilarious, and I kind of love it. So I'm not mad about it. And she does still have a little bit of like, are you kidding me kind of look on her face, so I don't hate it. And you know what? I've got two perfectly grumpy Dodal Queens of Batons here. So I certainly have room for the less grumpy prettified version. She's okay too. And the king, or those great eyebrows. I feel like he's always a little bit worried about what she's about to do, but he has her back regardless. His baton is at ease, but he's ready. And he's still got that vibe in the Carta Mundi version. Since this deck was made for export, that is the reason it's thought why Dodal's name is Italianized here as Dodali. Just to appeal to a broader audience a little bit. So it's made in Lyon by Jean Dodali, who was probably actually Jean Dodal. Guessing this is somebody or a company in Belgium, and Carta Mundi is noted here. Oh, I do want to point this out. It's kind of interesting. There's always something different on the Four of Coins. And we've got little clovers or clubs here. And it's actually kind of sweet the way they're colored in the Carta Mundi deck. All right, this is an edit that I actually really love. He was actually made less attractive for the Carta Mundi deck. But he looks kind of like a garden gnome, and I adore that. Absolutely love it. The whole beard without a mustache look is pretty good. And by the way, I didn't really point them out, but there are all sorts of spellings for coins in this deck. But they kept the title in the same spot for the newer version, which is kind of cool. I can't get enough of these horses. They're so cute. Just for comparison here. A few variations of spelling here. I love this Queen of Coins. That eyebrow is stern. She got to keep her stern eyebrow a little bit, at least, in the newer deck. I think that might be colored in as an earring for the king, which is kind of cool. Gives him a little bit of a pirate king look. The newer deck really favors white hair over all the interesting colors. Grays and pinks and all that. I think the face on the US Games copy is so funny. He looks like an action figure or something. Well, that's that. You know, in many ways, the Carta Mundi version, it stays faithful in some ways. You know, the outfit looks very similar. The changes in the faces can be unfortunate, but also just quirky and original, and I kind of love them. So I am glad to have this. This deck is an absolute mess. I don't read reversals, so I'm gonna have to go through and figure out which ones I got all mixed around. But like I said, of all of these, you know, usability, I love the Artisan version. I love the cardstock on Robledo's decks. They can stick a little bit because they are a nice rose petal finish, but it doesn't bother me. Like, this is just so nice. And it's so worth it for this book. I don't know if this is still available, but this book is just great. I love it. So I guess I just needed some sympathetic ears to witness this abomination of a deck with me. And to have some sympathy when we got to the Queen of Batons. But other than that, like I said, this deck is quirky and very weird, but I do love it. It's super cute. And I love a vintage deck. It's not a kitschy 70s deck, but it has that vibe going for it. So I guess kitschy 1996 deck. I'll take it. All right, thanks a lot for watching, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.